Hello, and welcome to the Focusing Way podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. I'm your host, David Battistella. And today on the Focusing Way podcast, Emily Agnew. Emily is a certified focusing teacher and guide, a writer, and consultant. She works with highly sensitive introverts, using focusing to create the listening space they need to flourish. Emily is a highly sensitive introvert herself. Over the years, she has experimented with many ways to overcome the anxiety that often accompanies the trait, which for her first showed up in her school days and peaked during 5 years of professional oboe playing with the Honolulu Symphony. In extensive work with clients, she's found focusing is the most powerful tool to address the particular challenges sensitive introverts face. Emily says, "To us, focusing is like a Swiss Army knife sprinkled with catnip. It's not just pragmatic and elegant, it's irresistible. We sensitive introverts need meaning and depth the way plants need water and sunlight, and focusing takes us directly there. We also find there the authentic connection we crave." Emily's mission is to get focusing skills and awareness to as many sensitive introverts as she can. She lives with her partner in Rochester, New York, where a butterfly occasionally lands on her shoulder in the form of a text from her daughter at college. We continue with part 2 of our conversation with Emily Agnew, a highly sensitive introvert. Emily writes, "About 15 to 20% of the population has the trait called high sensitivity, which has to do with the way you process information. This trait was identified by the psychologist Elaine Aron and has since been recognized by the American Psychological Association. It was widely publicized in 1996 in her book, The Highly Sensitive Person." So maybe you could tell me a little bit about what you discovered when you discovered high sensitivity.
Oh, that was another life-changing day for me. It was just a sidebar in a magazine. I think this might have been around the year 2000. And there was a list of traits that you might have and of things that you might need to do to care for yourself if you were highly sensitive. And the traits, it changed my life because it helped me recognize myself. I saw how my life had been in a kind of ongoing process of trying to set up the very structures that they were recommending a highly sensitive person would need to thrive. For example, I just get very overstimulated in big crowds, or loud places, very bright lights, loud noises, tags on clothing bother me. So it's a trait where you take in more sensory stimulation than the average person. And you process that more deeply. So it's more and more deeply. So you can see how that's a wonderful thing. And it also can get overwhelming. So that's why highly sensitive people like me typically need to recharge alone, similar to introverts, where many of us are introverts, a majority. But that we also need more sleep just to rest from all that processing, and are drawn to meditation, that was my life at the time. I was doing yoga a couple hours a day. I was working out an hour. I was sitting. I was just doing a lot of self-care in order to stay centered. So yeah, it was life-changing for me when I found out about the trait.
And when you sort of meshed that with focusing, how did that lead to the work you're doing right now?
Well, actually, what I realized, I had it was around that time that I started working with clients, and it was only in the last couple of years when I started trying to really identify, how would I describe my clients? Who are my clients? I realized virtually all of them are highly sensitive. I didn't plan it that way, but I guess it makes sense that they would have been drawn to me because that's the work I've done is the work of trying to learn how to flourish as a highly sensitive person. And one of the things about that is that because you process emotions so deeply, like highly sensitive kids take things a lot harder than like if you criticize them, they'll really take it to heart and they'll ponder it over. But the rest of the world doesn't know that. They don't mean anything by it. If they say something sharp to you, but people have they can close down on themselves and kind of pull inside and need help feeling safe coming back out if they've felt criticized in that way. I certainly have had to do that kind of work. So that's what I help clients reconnect to themselves and meet the parts of them that are trying to protect them through certain inner strategies that are no longer helpful so that they can be freed up just to really be fully themselves and be comfortable in themselves.
And just in describing that environment, I guess the other factor is sort of the social thing where people would look at you and say, what's your problem?
That's right. There's a shame. Many, many highly sensitive people, unless if you happen to, have, a family that really understood you and got you, which can happen, but it's more common, unfortunately, since the majority of people aren't highly sensitive. They just can't understand, like, why? I mean, why did the like when the spoon got caught in the garbage disposal, why did you jump a foot in the air when you heard that loud noise? It's hard for people to understand. Even like for my own partner, like if he wears a strong smelling aftershave or something, it bothers me. So it can, you have to work those kind of things out with with your loved ones who you lived with. But there's definitely issues of shame. There can be a pervasive feeling like there's something wrong with you, or certainly different and different with a value judgment. So I find for others as for me, having the information about high sensitivity can be a big relief that there's nothing wrong with you. It's actually a biologically very helpful trait. It's present they've discovered so far 100 other animal and insect species in which the trait exists, amazingly. It's around pausing. Has to do with pausing to check before you act as a strategy for survival and safety, as opposed to kind of barreling ahead. So historically, highly sensitive people have been the majority of counselors, wise people, shamans, those look to for wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the upside of the trait.
So maybe you could just tell me a little bit about how, when you introduced focusing, how you were able to sort of come into relationship with that part of you and how it's changed things for you.
Yes, well, it's really helped me to be able to go in and say, wow, something in me is feeling this way, like to realize that there was this shame, something in me, it feels like there's something wrong with it. I can give you a specific example. Like in my family is very verbal, lots of like jokes and puns and people like to talk about things a lot. And there can sometimes in the past when I was growing up, there was a sharpness to the quality of teasing and dialogue that went back and forth, which I was, unbeknownst to me or everyone else, I was taking it harder than everyone else. It was painful for me. And I learned to cope. Some people would cope with that by just not saying anything, by learning to be really quiet, unless they're sure that what they were going to say would be received in a way that felt good to them. I went the other direction and learned to put clouds of words around. It'd be if the true thing I really wanted to say or my real opinion was like a little gold nugget, I would bury it in cotton wool. Lots of qualifiers at the beginning, like, well, this might not be true, and maybe everyone doesn't think this. And then at the end, apologies, So, and sometimes I'd be so busy creating all those apologies and exceptions that I would forget to even say the main point, or no one would get it because it was so buried and all. So that's been a real project for me, is to be with the part of me that's afraid to just say what it means, and then to learn how to just say what I mean, and then stop.
And what's the experience been like working with other people?
It's been, do you mean specifically in terms of helping sensitive introverts? Like, how's that been?
Yeah.
Using this insight? Oh, it's been wonderful. I can't tell you how gratifying it is to explain these things, both the way of going in, the interrelationship focusing way of going in, and the combination of that and the information about high sensitivity. Even people who know, there are more people now who know about high sensitivity, but even though they know that, they may not realize some of the ways it's playing out for them. And it's as life-changing for them as it was for me to realize, oh, that's why I do that, and I can be with that part of me that does that, and kind of have my arm around it internally. It's the radical acceptance quality of focusing is like this balm in healing the shame of having felt like there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, just touching on that theme of radical acceptance, it's such a relief it was for me, to finally come to the realization that, hey, it's okay because it's happening within this vessel, within this container called me. And that was an aha moment for me when it came to sort of just understanding that all of these things can be accepted because they're happening inside my very own environment. One that's very personal, one that's only known really by me. But it was such a revelation to be able to just say, oh, wow, I can just accept all of this, and I can listen within this space, and I can come up with, through being in relationship with these parts of myself, come to new sort of realizations, new discoveries, have new curiosities, New
curiosities. Yeah, that thrill, it sounds like you're describing of really deep self-acceptance, and how that creates an environment in which things just naturally, as Jen would say, carry forward in you. Yeah, and you said earlier how that really affected your filmmaking, so it must have been exciting, really exciting.
I think the being with component and the ability to slow down and observe things from a focusing place and in a focusing way, it really can change your whole worldview.
Yes.
The one thing, I did a silence retreat years ago, and I remember within this silence retreat, which there were 4 meditation times per day, but one of the days per week, it lasted a couple of weeks, was a slow motion day. So you're already sort of slowing the world down completely by not speaking or anything, but then taking that to the next level, and sort of every sort of morsel of food you eat, or everything, you're brushing your teeth, everything is sort of in slow motion. You make an effort to, so when I came to focusing, and the whole idea of sort of slowing down is the fastest way there, that sort of became, it's amazing how these strands just find each other, and you have these moments of, you know?
Yes, yes. That I love that you said that because I too have done the like the 7-day meditation retreats where you sit all day and what you're describing of bringing that deep slowing down, and then you had an even deeper slowing down. I've never done a slow motion day. That sounds fascinating. But it's like this link then, the focusing becomes this link of how to bring skillful means, to use the Buddhist term, of how to bring that deep, slowed down awareness into the hustle bustle of everyday life. I think there's a deep relationship between focusing and meditation in that way.
Yeah, but it's also very important to point out that while the process can be slow and can be meditative, it's quite an active process, and with specific, sometimes very specific things in mind as we venture toward vagueness.
That's right. Well, and also action steps often can be the next thing. They may be the next carrying forward in our process. And that's one of the things that's been really helpful to me about focusing, and that I find has helped my highly sensitive clients, is the realization that as introverts in particular, we are very biased towards feeling a certain way before we act. And sometimes, if there's something in us that's afraid to take action, we will bias towards not acting because there's a sense of, it's not right yet. But the focusing for me, I've found I can access, it'll be a subtler, quieter, usually drowned out, but a bigger knowing of the right next thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I can trust that. I can sense that and trust that even in the face of something in me that's being quite loudly fearful. So that's been a big one, because one of the things I've found is my caution, that highly sensitive tendency to pause, to check before acting, can turn into just outright paralysis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the living in a focusing way is a kind of a layer of focusing, a way of being throughout your day. And then focusing is a sort of, now when I'm focusing, that's a kind of deeper process. But that whole process is deepening. Sort of my daily living is deepening, but then my focusing process is deepening. And then that is being brought back out into the other process. So they all sort of inform one another in this. And we can only just be where we are, who we are in this moment. So it always ends up coming back to right now and right here.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's very deep what you're saying. And I'm assuming that you have focusing partnerships. I have several. And the image that keeps coming to me is of someone like walking along, and then it's like there's a deep crevasse in front, and for me, I love to go down into those deep crevasses, like with a focusing partner, and just explore what's down in there, and then I'll bring back up what was in there and carry on to the next one. So there's a going down in, and then a bringing back out, and a carrying on,
Mm-hmm.
and that deep dive for me, and I find for highly sensitive people generally, it's a playground down there. Some people they would do anything. They'd rather be boiled in oil than go down there. But
True.
for for highly sensitive introverts, they love, that's the depth they crave. And like you say, it informs what you do all day. It's a zigzag back and forth, and entering in and a coming back out.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, it's making me realize it's not just the entering in, but it's the entering in a very safe space.
Mm-hmm.
When that sort of safe focusing space has been created, to be able to have that safety and freedom, in a sense, to explore the way you're describing, can really sort of lead to some really intriguing moments of self-discovery.
That's safety. Yeah, that's the image in my kind of deep dive image. It's two people going down together, one like rock climbers, one belaying the other. And that's very much my inner experience of focusing partnership is of being belayed, you know? Like there's that safe container, kind of the rope that'll catch me if I start to get merged with something in me. And yeah, it's very powerful. And it's a powerful way of being with another person, of facilitating another person's process. Very often people want to work on an incident and they attempt to remember. They try to like dredge up how they felt last Tuesday or whatever when this person said this to them. And they'll always say, you know, you don't have to recreate that. It's here with you now. You just invite whatever's here now about all that. And people that's such a relief for them. Not trying to be somewhere other than they are. Yeah.
Yeah, or feeling the deep need or desire to explain.
Yeah, that's right.
Where there's just the freedom to feel the feeling, like feel it in the body, feel how the body is speaking to you.
How it's expressing right now, right here now. Yeah. Yeah, that I would say is another profound way that the focusing has affected my work with clients is that because people often use words like fear or anxiety to label their emotions. They'll say, oh, that's my anxiety, instead of really sensing freshly right here now. What is it? Oh, is it a prickling in your chest or is it a heaviness in your belly? You know, that's such a powerful way to support people coming into the present moment and really encountering what's actually here now. Yeah.
And it's interesting how you mentioned how many people say that's my anxiety or my depression or my fill in the blank. And there's that ownership of it, but there's kind of also that's sort of the completely identified with. And so it's that exact thing where in focusing we want people to sort of notice that there's something there that feels anxious and just to sort of begin to create the space to come into relationship with that something.
Yeah, that there's, the radical acceptance piece of just whatever's there and the openness of something is, I get a big breath now just even talking about it, even though this is what I do every day. It just never ceases to delight me that I've had the privilege of finding this way of being in the world. It really I really love it. I have such passion for getting it out to more people and particular interest in, people who are built like me because they seem to thrive so much better when they've got focusing. It's just such a Swiss Army knife. You can use it for I use it for also not just for client work, but like if I'm trying to sense, what wants to happen next in my business.
Absolutely.
Or anything. I'm trying to make decisions, just for pretty much every area of life.
I often say focusing was something I really tried to break because I think almost everything I had come across or tried or was interested in or was drawn to at some point didn't hold up. And I've yet to break focusing. I can't break it.
Well, yeah, we'll have to really push the envelope on that because I haven't been able to either. And it's funny because I should say something in me had labeled me a kind of serial monogamist in the modality department. That I'd have these intense love affairs with, say, nonviolent communication for a while, and then no, I'm moving on. And I learned a ton from my study of nonviolent communication, and but it's nothing against that, but the focusing, like I said, it really feels like home. Like it's a meta modality. I think
Hmm.
it's more than just a set. It's not a set of rules or tools. It's a way of being that like glasses that you put on that you just can see everything better. That's how I see it. So I'm not too optimistic about us finding a way to break it, but it's kind of fun, looking for new applications.
It sure is. Well, I think if it feels right for you, or if there's anything else you wanted to add, this might be a nice time for us to close our conversation, which will be shared with others.
Well, thank you so much. I've really found this so intriguing, and I love that you're doing this. And I'm grateful to have had this time to explore with you today.
Thank you so much for sharing your time and your insights and for listening so luminously.
You're so very welcome.
You've been listening to the Focusing Way podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. I'm your host, David Battistella. Please take a moment to visit our website at thefocusingway.com.